What's everybody? What's going on, everybody? Zach Evnesh here with Mike Dolce, and Mike's website is thedolcediet.com. There's various websites from there. This is episode number 6 of the STRONGCast podcast, and this is great. Mike is a busy guy, so big thanks, Mike, for making this happen. And ironically, Mike grew up in the area that I live in now, Jersey guy, and now you're out in Vegas, right?
That's right. In Las Vegas now. Yeah, grew up in Belmar, a few blocks off of the beach.
Very funny. So, I mean, things are obviously going very well for you, working with UFC. You've got various, like, training programs out. You've got the UFC, I think it's like the DVD, the Following Along program.
UFC Fit, yes.
UFC Fit. And are you kind of like the guy behind, I guess, the training systems that are being incorporated into the UFC gyms, or how are you involved with that?
Exactly. So I'm the co-creator of UFC Fit. I did all the design, all the science is me. And then, you know, the business is the UFC, Don Gold specifically. It was his idea. And I did all the science. I built the program. It's a 12-week periodization program for the average person, the person who's 20 to 40 pounds overweight, hasn't been in shape for 6 months, 2 years, remembers once upon a time they were in shape. It's for that person. Yeah. It's not for the 18 to 34-year-old male to become the next UFC superstar. They're already in the gyms. They're training with you right now. You know what I mean? They're taking to the next step. So it's that transitional piece.
Yeah.
And,
you know. What's funny is that's like the majority of people. I mean, when we're working with adults, that's who we're seeing. The guys that used to be in shape, 20 to 40 pounds overweight. We're going to circle back to that, but I'd love to give people like a background of kind of who you are, how things started for you. I know you were a power lifter in your earlier years. You were a big guy. I think you've lost like a lot of weight. I'll let you kind of get into the details of how that went about. So talk to us about your years in high school or the younger years, sports that you were into, and who introduced you to training and like combative sports.
I remember being 8 or 9 years old and seeing a muscle magazine, of Arnold Schwarzenegger at the 7-Eleven on the river in Belmar, if you know, on Highway 35. And my mother bought it for me. And I was 8 or 9 years old, probably like a lot of kids, right? Somewhere right around that time. I was just enamored with it, the strength conditioning, weightlifting, and all that. And, I played all the traditional sports, in those short communities. You play soccer, you play baseball, you play basketball. And, I played lacrosse a little bit, so I kind of did everything growing up. And then in high school, freshman year, I decided to just wrestle. It was the first year that St. Rose Catholic School had a wrestling program, and that's what I wanted to do. I was 5'4", 114 pounds as a freshman, and I was, little, and that's wrestling. I couldn't play basketball. I couldn't do all the things that I did because I was undersized, but I wasn't, under speed or strength, and that's really kind of, I think, propelled me to be so focused on the strength and conditioning side because genetically, I'm 5'10". I don't have the same advantages, mechanical advantages, let's say, as other athletes in the sports that I wanted to pursue at that point. Right. So strength and conditioning became key. And I just kept, like you, keep evolving. I'm a white belt still in it. I'm still learning. Every program that I finish, I think, that was shit. I could have done something better because you keep learning, you keep evolving. So that's kind of how it's gone through, from the wrestling to, competitive wrestler, high school, at college, blew out my shoulder, changed everything because that's all I wanted to do. That's all I knew was competitive wrestling. And, I wanted to use that to go and, get a degree, but wrestling was everything. Blew out my shoulder, couldn't wrestle, and went to work, started running a business, personal training business, full time. Where I worked with a college team, actually Brookdale out there that you're familiar with, and was working in municipal tax assessing. The suit and tie job, the job that had to pay the bills. There's no money, especially back then. We're talking 15, 20 years ago now. There's no money in that stuff back then. Working with athletes and things. So I found powerlifting as a tool to rehab the shoulder. I mean, late teens, below my shoulder. I needed to compete still. I think that's kind of I veered off a little bit. needed to compete still. And then I used the rehab of, the physical rehabilitation of my shoulder and turned that into a competitive powerlifting career where I started jumping weight classes and got my body weight all the way up to 280 pounds, competed as a super heavy, and then, then lost 110 pounds and fought professionally a few years later.
It's crazy.
So, I mean, that's kind of like, a condensed,
Sure.
40 years or so right there.
Right. So I know that St. Rose kind of had an on and off coach. When you were there, when did you graduate high school?
Graduated in '94. My coaches were Glenn Anderson and Bruce Juska. Those were the two guys, and they were great guys, but they weren't high-level wrestlers. I don't think they placed in their district tournaments, in their day. But they were great guys, and they were there for the team to help build the program.
Right.
And that's another reason why I focused on strength and conditioning, because technically we didn't have what a Brick Memorial had. We didn't have the same tradition of techniques and practical application from our coaching staff. And I knew, well, I can be in shape, I can be stronger, I can go, and that's what I knew as a freshman. I was a captain of my varsity wrestling team, made varsity and became a captain, fourth captain freshman year. And I think it's because of that work ethic, that drive, and I started to lead the practices. All the strength and conditioning, the coach would just, give me the whistle or, follow Dolce kind of deal. And even for the weight cuts, I was almost doing the same thing I'm doing right now. It's just a different T-shirt.
Yeah, it's so funny that like the guys that become these coaches are the guys that have gone through like what you're saying. You have that white belt mentality. You go through this like evolution, almost a revolution, where like you're doing stuff, you're kind of ahead of the curve, and then you start realizing all the mistakes you make. We get some serious injuries, and I always say like injuries are what make us smart. It's like as a coach or even an athlete, I go, when you guys are hurt, that teaches you how to learn to work around those injuries. It teaches you what not to do. It teaches you what your body agrees with, disagrees with. So, I want to kind of, a lot of people are confused with training methods. There's so many training methods, and it's just super easy to get confused. I want to touch upon when you were powerlifting, when you got injured. Talk to us about those training methods that you were following back then. Who was helping you train, and what do you think kind of put you to the point where you injured your shoulder? Talk to us about, the mistakes you made back then and the way you were training.
Well, I started, I was strength training. I was resistance training going into high school with weights at home. I had a few different workout benches, a Marcy weight stack, plus barbells, the cheap Kmart barbells and window weights in those old shore houses, that counterbalance the windows. Those were, like 2 or 3 or 5 pounds. I'd use those all day long. And then in high school, I lied about my age to have my mother sign the consent form. I was, I think, 12, and you had to be 13 to join up, this gym, the body shop. And, did that, got signed up, and I started, training. The one guy there, the owner of the gym, he showed me like one circuit to do, and he just kind of, blew me off. And I just took it from there. It was in my hands. And
like bodybuilding work.
It was more very bodybuilding centric. This gym was very strength oriented, so it was like a power bodybuilding mentality out of this gym. But it was a little too bodybuilding for me. And I went to the Jersey Shore Fitness Shop, if you're familiar with that place in Bradley Beach.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of set up shop for about a decade and started powerlifting and that had not a competitive team, but I had a group of about 10 guys that would compete regularly. And I just fit in. I was, 15-year-old kid, and they're all 30-year-old men, state champions and record holders, AAU and ADFPA and USAPL, and I started training with them, and by the time I was 17, I squatted 525, weighing, 178 pounds.
Shit.
I'm just a born squatter, benching, shoulder issues, and that's never been a good thing, but a puller and a squatter I was. And it always translated back to wrestling. Every summer I'd put on 20 pounds of lean meat. Like I said, high school, I was 114 freshman year. I graduated at 210.
Really?
So I put on 20, 25 pounds a year almost. I hit a spurt. I went from 5'4" to 5'10" in that time period. But still, I walked out of there probably looking like I do right now.
That is crazy. It's just, you're making all these gains, you're making all these, you're throwing around these big weights. I work with a lot of high school athletes, so when I get a lot of questions through email, through YouTube, it's all these high school kids tons of high school kids. It's high school kids or a lot of guys that are in like their 30s, 40s, 20 to 40 pounds overweight.
Yep.
So here you are back in the day with really minimal information. You and I are probably the same age. I'm almost 38. I graduated in 93.
Yep.
Our information was we were so misinformed with everything. But here you are putting on 100 pounds. I don't know if you were, you were strong, you were big. It's not like you were a big roly-poly 210, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you think you did that you knew, like looking back, this is why I made those gains. These were the right things that I did.
Consistency. I was consistent with my training. I was consistent with my rest. I was consistent with my nutrition. I was consistent. I focused on clean form, and I'm still evolving form and technique. I always focused on good form, but I was never afraid to work and fail. Always pushing that barrier. I'd always be straining veins in the neck style lifting with as clean as form as I could and consistently. That was the goal and that desire to be bigger, faster, stronger, better, to improve. Like I said, I'm very, I don't want to say competition oriented, but I'm very goal oriented. If I don't have a challenge in front of me to focus on, I'm lost. So I think I applied that mindset, and I continue to towards strength conditioning, fitness, and it morphs in different phases. The power phase, or an endurance phase, or a longevity phase, or cosmetic hypertrophy style phase. So I'm still kind of riding that roller coaster.
Right. Who are the guys when you got your information? Was it basically those guys at that Jersey Shore fitness shop that were like your mentors, or were you picking stuff up from books? I mean, back in the day, when I talk about my methods, in the 90s, it was everything in Flex magazine was like cables, feel the muscle. None of the bodybuilders said, you need to deadlift. You guys need to do 5x5 squats. You need to farmer walk. Everything was about just like squeezing stuff. And I guess you were lucky enough. Who mentored you, or how did you follow suit into this type of training?
I think I was exposed to the very same Flex magazine and Muscle and Fitness and Ironman and Muscle Mag, and you go down the list. And I followed the sport of competitive bodybuilding, the NPC level, the IFBB level. I did follow it, and I respect what those athletes do immensely. The challenge, and the dedication, the goal setting, the sacrifice that they put up with. But it wasn't my style. It didn't suit my personality, and I knew that at a young age. It didn't suit my personality. I needed more of the gritty strength side. And the competing as a bodybuilder, that never entered my mind. It doesn't make sense to me, personally. But moving away to powerlifting competition, that made perfect sense. Who can move this weight farther, faster, and whatnot. So I kind of follow that model.
Yeah. Now you get injured, and it's like the thing that change your life essentially. I mean, you were 280 or so. You went on losing over 100 pounds. What do you think is the thing that caused you to screw up your shoulder, or the things?
That was in high school. So I blew up my shoulder in the state tournament in high school. And it was crushing because everything was perfect. I was like 22-3. I was a favorite going in. I was doing very well. I had 2 scholarship offers locked up, one from Seton Hall, one from Lehigh. Life was good, and I was, how well would I place in this tournament? And I remember going for a throw, and I just blew out my shoulder, tore everything. And it was devastating. And then, I was up like, I forget how many I was up. Blew up my shoulder, and then he got a 2-point takedown reversal, and then got me in trouble and won on points. And then that was the last match I ever wrestled, with a torn out shoulder, and that was life changing. Who knows? And looking back now, if I continued on and that injury didn't happen, and I moved on, I had a good career, great career, or so-so career. If I had a larger career as a competitive wrestler, I probably wouldn't be a coach right now. I do believe that I wouldn't have taken this path. I wouldn't have followed it. I would have hit my goal, focused into more of a business-oriented, traditional American endeavor, and raised a great family, and I probably would have lived that lifestyle. So that is a defining moment, a very, very, cool looking back.
Yeah, interesting. So you get this injury, and then you're into this powerlifting. You're like talking to me, you're close to 300 pounds. What was your heaviest weight? What did you weigh at your...
So that was, so in my mid-20s, I think 23 or 24, I ate my weight up to 280 pounds while competing as a powerlifter. I started competing at like 17 or so, and then once the shoulder was done, I started training and competing as soon as I was strong enough. And started at 181, and I competed 181, 198, 220, 242, and I was chasing numbers. I was, like I said, a very good squatter. Squatted, I forget, 630 or so. Weighing, in the 198 category. I forget these numbers now. That's just a long time ago. But it was just massive. I mean, 6 plates were no problem. I could do reps, over 600 pounds, as a teenager, a late teenager, and then into my early 20s. And I knew, wasn't taking drugs, and it was a matter of leverage points and body mass. And, I know the mathematical formulas, who a guy like Louis Simmons was a big mentor in his methodology and his, evolutionary, philosophy on training and evolving and peaking, pushing PRs, constantly and such. And I used that methodology, from, let's say as a 242-pound powerlifter to get into the super heavies. 282 was what I peaked at. And then I wound up competing, about 268 on competition day, 282 during my training cycle. Fucking massive. I'm 5'10", fucking massive. And I wasn't that fat. I probably had 16, 18% body fat, which at that size, that wasn't bad. I was this big fucking kid.
Crazy.
Felt terrible. felt horrible. I would sweat, and I was working. I was a municipal tax assessor, suit and tie job, and all the fancy pants bullshit. And I'd have to wear these suits and ties with this 21.5-inch neck. I'd get these shitty $30 shirts at the big and tall shop, and I'd spend $100 and something getting them tailored, because they have to cut so much material. And so get to work, and I'd always have to have a backup suit, like shirt, because I'd sweat through it at 280 pounds. Winter, summer, you're fucking sweating it, midday. Dude, so I'd have to go and freshen up.
This is funny.
Hated it.
It's funny. And it's I never really heard too much about, back in the day, powerlifters that kind of like got so big, they peaked out, and then they're like, I'm done with this. Now I'm going to lose the weight. And a good friend of mine, AJ Roberts, he spent a few years at Westside, set a world record at the 308, and he was just down at the Manasquan gym a couple weeks ago, and he's down to like 250. He's like, as soon as I beat that world record, the first thing I could think about was, I can't wait to lose all this weight. And Louis told him actually that he could have even lifted heavier weights. He's like, I think you could have totaled 3,000. He goes, but the problem with most people is they break mentally far before they break physically. And AJ goes, he was right. I was like tired of like trying to lift heavier and heavier weights and eat more and get bigger. He's like, I broke mentally, and I just needed to like feel healthy again, which is what you're saying. So
that's exactly it.
It's just exactly. Like set you over the top. What did you do? I don't want to make it like this is how somebody loses 110 pounds, but what were the steps that you took when you wanted to just start losing weight? When you're like, you know what, I'm done at this 260, 280 pounds, time to lose weight. What are some of the important changes that you made that you'd also recommend this is the starting point for when you want to start losing weight the right way?
Because I was, a weight-trained athlete and competing and such, I was taking supplements, protein powders and creatines and all the traditional stuff that everybody else is probably taking anyway. No more supplements. Didn't take any supplements at all immediately. No supplements. No vitamins even. Nothing. And I went to real food, to eating real whole food in great abundance. Eating as much as I want, because 280 pounds, you're hungry. You're used to eating 6,000 calories a day, or however much it was to sustain that weight. And eating in great abundance, but food that I would prepare myself with my own hands. So I'd have to hand prepare from as natural of ingredients as possible, but eat as much of it as I wanted to. And I went from 280 down to 250 pretty quick. That was a quick drop. And then from 250, every couple weeks I dropped down another, 5-10 pounds of functional weight. I was in no rush. I was still strength training. I started grappling and wrestling. Damian Hahn, if you remember him,
sure.
From Lakewood. So friends with Damian Hahn, we used to go. I used to wrestle at his school, the Hammer, wrestling club.
Yeah, so did my brother. That was amazing. That place. My younger brother used to wrestle down at Hammer, and that was
the shit.
Dude, it was just amazing. Yeah.
So I went back and started wrestling again. This is, with a different body. I hadn't been there in 10 years. I wrestled in high school over there, and then 10 years later, 280 pounds, 100 pounds heavier. And it took me a while to get mechanics back, but that's kind of what I did to kind of transition back into competition or another, mental pursuit. Instead of just the weight loss, I gave myself other goals and outlets to keep me going, not walking on the treadmill or, just doing a weight and, that type of deal. Right. Found other goals outside of the house or outside of my normal routine.
Where were you? Where were you? A lot of people, I think they complicate things. So down where we live, one thing that's like odd is there's no like Whole Foods isn't near us. Trader Joe's isn't near us. There's none of those places. There's A&P, there's Food Town. It's actually like people think, oh, Jersey Shore, it's so busy there all the time. It's quite quiet here until Memorial Day through Labor Day. So where were you buying your food at? What are some of the choices, foods, and like how are you breaking up the diet? Was it an even ratio of protein, carbs, fat? Let's kind of talk to people about where you went food shopping and how you broke down, your nutrients.
I get food shopping in Jersey. It's nice because you can get a lot of produce, a lot of fruits and things like that rotating through. So as much fresh fruit and produce that would come through certainly would. The traditional, ShopRites and Pathmarks and A&Ps and Dean's Market down in Ocean Township, I think off at 35 by the old Seaview Square Mall. That's a great natural shop. And Wegmans, down, that's, north of where you are.
Yeah, there's a Wegmans in, I think it's in Ocean or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one. So stores like that, and that's what I do out here in Las Vegas. I have to source my materials, I have to go to my butcher to get my wild caught meats, and then I either go to a farmer's market, order the Whole Foods, to get certain produce, but they don't carry asparagus, so you got to go to the other side of town. And that's I have no problem spending time sourcing my nutrition. Back then, no problem, and now it's just I've continued to evolve that philosophy.
So what would somebody who's looking to start losing weight, whether they're a fighter, whether it's somebody that's just into training, or maybe it's somebody in their 20s, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years old. And what I've noticed, the bottom line is with men is that like they just let themselves go. They gain a lot of weight and then it's like they don't even know what to do anymore. They're not sure. Did you cook in quantity and buy like a ton of food? What are some just critical things that, if we're going to give advice to people to just start eating clean, what do you want them to start doing? What are some simple things that they need to start doing?
What I tell everybody, whether it's a private client, Vitor Belfort, random person around the world, or literature in any of all the content that we put out. Stand in your kitchen, open up your cabinets, open up your fridge, take everything out, put it on the fucking table, put it on the counter, and look at it. What's bullshit? Get the bullshit out of there. And if you don't know what bullshit is, you're a liar. We all know, I like to say, we all know when we're fucking up, so just don't fuck up. That's bad, so you get rid of that. And then the things you don't know about, you read the ingredients. You don't read the nutritional facts. I don't care about the macros, the protein, the carbs, the calories. I don't care about that stuff. It's the ingredients, the nutrient density. That's what matters. Any chemicals, any preservatives, those are gone in the garbage. I won't even give them to the Goodwill because I don't want to poison anybody. And see what's there. Then we have grocery lists available, or basically it's you buy earth grow nutrients. That's the term that we use. It's real food. If that's all you focus on, then that's my number one principle: earth grow nutrients. If that's all you eat and don't do anything else correctly, you're still going to be doing really well. And that's what everybody at home needs to do. And you'll find that it's inexpensive to do so. It really is, especially when you become more careful of what you eat and your portion size, and you're more conscious and you're scheduled. You're eating at even intervals. So now all of a sudden you're not kind of binging and purging and putting things in the refrigerator that go bad a day or two later, and everybody's refrigerator has probably $40 worth of food that's just going to get thrown out, at any given point. And these are things, this is data that we have and tests that we've done and studies that we've done and, different testimonials and experiences and things like that. It's easy to do. And that's really what I feel like my job is at this stage of life right now, is to share that information with people. It's easy to do. Just don't fuck it up. You know,
Just get rid of the crap. How frequently do you like to see the average person eating? Do you want them doing that eat every 3 hours? Do you want them fasting? What are some recommendations you want them to be doing that's important?
and that's number two. Perfect timing. Number one principle is earth grown nutrients. Number two is eat every 2 to 4 hours based on what you just did and what you are about to do. If you're sitting on the couch not expending energy, well, you're eating light, keeping your metabolism working, keeping your blood sugar stable, but not really eating anything additional. If you're working really hard, well, we need to recover, replenish from the training session, or to prepare, the recovery phase, or prepare to do something hard training, competition later on that day. So I don't believe in the template program where here you follow this for 6 weeks. We follow the principles, just like technique, MMA technique, let's say boxing technique. You follow the principles, but each fighter throws his jab differently. Principles are the same. You write it on paper, it's the same. But when you see it in action, it's drastically different. Nutrition is the same way. Diet, lifestyle, peaking performance, it's the same way.
So what's so interesting is the past few years, actually it's almost been like past decade, little by little, the paleo, not little by paleo kind of became very popular. CrossFit made it very popular, but then people started talking about eat like a caveman. Cavemen never ate during the day. They were out hunting, so don't eat during the day. Eat everything at night. And it's like, I'm sure people are confused. Even I got confused. Somebody who was like pretty level-headed, had a lot of knowledge. I gained a little bit of weight, had my knee injury. It seemed to like shake up my metabolism. I started fasting. Then I went back to regular eating, fasting again. And now I said to myself, you know what? I'm doing what I always did, which was the basics. Eat about every 3 hours. I feel really good. Not really counting calories, just eating clean. If I'm very active, I'm eating a little more. If I'm not as active, I'm eating a little less. I feel really good, and I actually lost fat and gained muscle versus the thing that's like, oh, don't eat during the day. And certainly that did help me lose weight, but then I found myself, I wanted to eat like just shit food, and I never wanted like any crap food. So, when people are trying to kind of dial in like a clean eating, I think people need sometimes a structured program. So some of the questions that came through, we told people that we're going to do this podcast. Some people sent out some Twitter questions, and people were asking questions about carbs, no carbs, and frequency of eating. So we dialed that in. We want whole foods, earth-grown foods, eating every 2 to 4 hours. Talk to us about the type of foods, because people respond differently. I've seen some people, they could eat a good amount of carbs, protein, fats blended. Other people don't respond well to carbs. Have you seen that, or do you like to see people having a certain split as far as their nutrients?
The first step is clearing out all the bullshit. So we can't really identify digestive disorders or issues until we get all the chemicals out of there. So we go through that phase, that transitional phase, where we transition from the traditional diet to a whole foods diet, an earth-grown nutrient diet completely. Once we have that established, then we play with food groups and food pairings and food timings, which is easy to do within recipes. So like I say, we use the principles. The principles are we eat, earth-grown nutrients, and we go through the list. But you lean meats, wild-caught lean meats, as close to the earth as possible. We take that principle even further now. As I want to have my dinner come from as close to my backyard as possible. If I could walk out in my yard and rip out a potato and pull a salmon, out of a stream and walk right into my house and eat it as close to the raw state as possible, well, that ensures extremely high nutrient density. I mean, that is pure. That's exactly what you need to be healthy. And I say that earth-grown nutrients have sustained all of life on the planet since the dawn of time. And that settles it. So the closer we can get to that, the healthier it is. So when you make your food choices, that's the way we need to think. So we stick within principles. Wild caught meats. Meats. Caught by hunters. In wild roaming. That's what we want. That are grazing, eating what they normally eat. So they're in a happy, calm, chilled state. Their digestive system's working properly. They're healthy. That's what we want. That's what we need. Not the chemically created cows and chickens and fish that are floating around. That's poison. So we want the wild caught stuff, and the same concept is with the plant-based products. Wild caught, fresh.
Yeah, a buddy of mine lives in Tennessee, and he raises his own chickens. So that's where they eat. That's where he gets his eggs from, his chicken, and then his friend, who also owns land, he raises cattle. So he says he trades that guy just like, pounds and pounds of meat for the chicken. He goes, I know exactly where my meat is coming from. And he goes, these chickens aren't, and he said the same thing. He goes, they're not stressed out. They're not squeezed into cages. They're free roaming. And what's so, it's so like when you're saying it's so interesting because this guy is so chill. And I think he's 50 and he's shredded. He's in top shape. He's just an amazing guy. He's just like got it together. And it's just interesting that him saying the same stuff. He knows where his foods come from. Now you live in Vegas. Is Vegas? I know there's like city-like, and then you could kind of be almost a little bit in like rural areas. So where are you getting your foods from? You go to the butcher, you said?
We do, and we live. People picture Vegas. The Strip, of course, is there. We live, far from the Strip. It's like 15, 20 minutes, but we live, literally tucked into the side of a mountain, which is a nice, quiet, peaceful existence. For us, Vegas is amazing, man. We certainly love the lifestyle here, but you can't grow a lot of things. Now, in our backyard, when we moved here, we took the time to have the property, landscaped and dug the holes, and we have pomegranate trees, and we have a pear tree, we have an almond tree and a fig tree, nectarine tree. What else? We have a lime tree, so we have a little bit, and then we have a basil or a spice garden. So that's getting what we have. Then each season we'll put in a little bit more as we can find plants that'll thrive out here. And then we like I say, I'll go to 3 or 4 different stores to get all the products that I need, and a butcher, of course. And I recommend anybody go make friends with your local butcher. Talk to that guy or girl. They know what's good, and if they know you, they will hook you up and give you exactly what you need. So yeah, it's always a search, but we enjoy it. We'll make a day out of it, going shopping. We'll get coffee. And
what did so today? Like, give us a rundown of what like a day in the life of Mike Dolce is like. You're running around. I mean, you've got several books out. You're doing stuff online. You're a busy guy, and what does everybody say when they can't achieve something? I'm too busy. I'm too busy. So you're a busy guy. You're ripped. You're ripped. You got a successful business. You're doing things on a very high level. You're helping a lot of people. Talk to us about what a typical day in your life looks like, and maybe even run us through today, like what time you woke up, what did you eat, training, how you organize, things with the business. Talk to us about today.
Today is a pretty typical day, of the phase that I'm in right now, that I am here in Vegas. I'm on the road more than half the year. So right now I do happen to be in Vegas, and I'm assistant coaching the Ultimate Fighter for BJ Penn, Team BJ Penn. So I'll get up about 5 a.m., which is pretty typical. About 5 a.m. here, I'll get up, hydrate. I like to drink water. I'll get about 2 pounds of water in me, room temperature water, chill out, breathe the air, and bang out some sort of a workout. Whether it's a light cardiovascular. Today was a bodyweight circuit. I've been in the bodyweight circuits lately, so I have to do this UFC Fit, appearance, a month from now. So I'm kind of in training for that. Bang out, that for about 25, 30 minutes or so, cool down, hydrate again, and eat the breakfast bowl, which is, it's oats. We were talking about food and ingredients before. It's oats and chia seeds and hemp seeds and ground almonds and, blueberries and raisins and coconut flakes and cinnamon, anything else in there. And then almond butter, like a tablespoon of almond butter in the bottom. And it's delicious. That's the way I start almost every day. And then recorded our podcast and did a bunch of work. This is like 7, 8, 9 a.m. This is all before 9 a.m. Did a bunch of email correspondence and things like that, and recorded our podcast. The Mike Dolce Show, reported an hour of that today. And 9 o'clock then had a meeting of Dolce Diet business, because we are a book publisher, and we have other books and coming out, and author and story times and website content and development and management. And then hopped in the car and went down to the Ultimate Fighter to film the show. So then we, ran a 2-hour practice there on the set, and come home, as soon as the 2 hours come straight home, and this is the day. This is the glamorous life right
This
here.
is still only 2 o'clock.
Yeah, and actually at the gym, it was kind of a boring day. It was a roll day, just grappling. My next little tweak, so I ran on the treadmill. I did 5 miles in an hour, so it was like a jog run light. Just I couldn't stand there. I figured I'd stay active, kept my heart rate below 140, so I wasn't going to bonk myself out, and just kind of up my level a little bit. Then drove home, and my wife had what we call the skinny sumo stir fry ready, which is chicken lightly sauteed, pan fried, lightly sauteed in grapeseed oil, broccoli, garlic, kind of chopped up, mixed together, peppers and onions, and on a bed of quinoa. And that was lunch. Hung out for a little bit, little more business, work and communication responses. Then back to the gym for a fight day. We had a guy fighting on the show today. Deal with that, and then back here to be on the STRONGCast.
Unreal, dude. So it's 7 o'clock in Vegas, right? Right now?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So, very, very productive. What time do you go to bed at night? What's a typical time to go to bed? How many hours of sleep you get?
Anywhere between 8 and 1 a.m. That's depending on the schedule. But I almost always wake up at 5. I always try to, because I'm more productive before 9 a.m. than I am between 9 and 9 at night,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I get that stuff done.
Yeah. What do you think about, sleep has been a big thing that's kind of like coming full circle. It used to be a lot of people were just like, get 6 hours of sleep, you'll be fine. Now a lot of people, especially guys that are coaches in some, area, they're saying, hey, man, if your metabolism is broke or you want to start making more gains or be more productive, you got to sleep 8 hours. So I think there's times in life where you don't really have a choice. Right now, there's times, obviously, like you're going to bed sometimes at midnight or 1 a.m. because there's fights and whatnot going on late at night. And the UFC is like it's not something that goes on every 3 months anymore. It's happening every 3 to 4 weeks, actually every week.
Feels like I'm at one every weekend,
Every weekend. What do you think about the importance of sleep for somebody who's not a fighter? And then let's start talking about the fighters they need to start doing. So somebody like myself, I train hard, I run a business. What kind of, I want to start getting leaner. What kind of sleep do I need to get?
Sleep is, I function best on 9 hours of sleep a day. 9 hours straight. That's why I say I try and go to bed close to, between 8 and 9 if I'm going to be getting up somewhere around 5 or so. 9 is always the goal, to get those 9 hours. When I get 9 hours, I'm Superman. I can do anything. If I can stack a few of those 9-hour days together, mixed in with a couple 7s or 8s, I'm ready to go. And, I do believe in they call it sleep debt, where if you don't sleep enough, if you're only sleeping 4, 5, 6 hours for a while, that's going to grate on you. It's going to tear you down, and you're going to reach, an overreaching state or an overtraining state, which is debilitating. And that's all based on sleep and can be corrected by sleep, as you know. So a lot of times when I work with clients or students, sleep is everything. Sleep, stress management, and then we can focus on diet and then training after that. But I think that should be the order of priority. Sleep first. How are you sleeping? Get that in order, and then stress management, external factors, internal factors, and such. So now you can focus on committing to the nutrition program, which takes scheduling and accountability, and then the training program, which is probably the funnest part. The 45 minutes to an hour and a half of physical exertion a day. Anybody can kind of do that, and then spend the other 23 hours fucking it up and fighting with everybody all the time and not paying their bills, and then eating poorly.
That's a typical American.
There you go. And it's easy. It's easy not to do that, but you just have to not do that.
Right.
Try to get that out there for people.
Yeah, it would be real interesting to see people started dialing that stuff in, and I just think like accountability, they're missing. They kind of forget that why, or they have that like inner drive, and I want to kind of take that like full circle because right now they got the Ultimate Fighter. You're there, and it's Frankie Edgar against BJ Penn, right? So you're working with BJ. BJ has had a long staying power. He's been at the top. He's had some close fights. He's lost. But guys that have, but everybody loses. But guys that have, that he's fought are no longer fighting. And I'm not sure how old BJ is. How old is he now?
He's 33 or 34.
Okay, so he's still, I mean, age-wise, that is young, but we don't see people having this kind of longevity in the fight game for a while. I mean, he was fighting, Matt Hughes, so I feel like that was years and years ago, and most people said that's it. Once Hughes beat him the first time, he's done, but he's still getting back at it. What do you think gives a fighter longevity in the game of MMA?
The ability to not take damage, which is the first rule of fighting. Don't get hit, and then hit. That's the rule. And BJ did a great job of that for the first 2/3 of his career. The larger money paydays came with the larger money opponents, with the larger bodies and the larger power output. And BJ fought up a few weight classes, and started to take a little bit of damage, which is why he decided to drop down 145 pounds and be the bigger guy. So these are ways to mediate the damage and extend the longevity, the lifetime. BJ, he's a lifelong martial artist, and he approaches it as a martial art, and I think that adds to the longevity also. He'll be training forever, and he knows his body well enough to avoid some of the major injuries that'll set most athletes back.
Right. We hear a lot about MMA, like the top MMA guys losing a lot of weight. I can't remember who was talking about it. Somebody had mentioned that like Anderson Silva would like walk around at like 230, and then they're able to drop all this weight. What do you want to see fighters doing a better job at with regards to making weight? I work with a lot of wrestlers. You're a former wrestler. Even wrestlers still believe that if they get to that lighter weight class, be it through starvation, feeling like crap, being weaker, they feel like they're stronger. Whereas when you graduated in '94, the best story I could give would be Matt Esposito graduated in '94. So Dave and Zach, Dave is works at.
That's funny. I know those guys. I was just with Dave.
Okay, so yeah, Dave is big in the MMA game. He's with he knows with the Gracies, and Zach is at Oklahoma with John Smith. But Matt was a 103 pound. I was a year ahead of him, but Matt was a 103 pounder as a freshman. Nasty. Sophomore year, he was 103, and then he had a hard time making weight, and he got mono or something like that, and he went from 103. He may have gone to 119 in the districts, and it was like his first loss since the States the year before. And he just, I think it ran his body down. Junior year, he went to 135. I can't remember how he did. Wow. Senior year, went to 152, took third in the state. And wow. So 103 to 152, not the weight gain that you made. Sure. But he stopped cutting weight. The guy was just strong as hell. And but today, even the kids that I train, with all the education I give them, will have kids that are 120, 125, cutting down to 106, 108. Sometimes their coaches still make them do it. Sometimes the kids do it on their own. What do you want to see fighters and really the combative sport world start doing with regards to making weight? What do you want them to do that you feel or is going to help their performance?
Athletes need to live 52 weeks a year as professional athletes. All athletes should live life as a professional athlete, make professional decisions with their health and their career. So they won't blow up in the off season. They'll actually be adding functional muscle and not retaining non-functional muscle in the off season. So that as they get closer to competition time, like adult males, combat athletes, I like to be right at about 7% body fat. If we can attain 7% body fat 3 weeks before competition, it's butter. It's easy. Peaking is so easy from that point on. And if we do our job 52 weeks before that, 45 weeks before that, well, it's easy to do. It's a given. And the progress is exponential. The advancement of technique and skill and conditioning and composure and all those things increases. The athletes that focus on that. Nick Lentz is one of those guys. Nick Lentz, you know him. He fights at 145 pounds now in the UFC. He made his career at 155. Retained me because he was having trouble making 55. I looked at him. I said, "You're a 45 pounder." So what are you talking about? And he's very successful at 55. So you're a 45 pounder. I know the guys at 55. Evan Dunn and Mark Bocek. They're 190 pounds making 55. Nick, you're 173. Fat. You're a 45 pounder. So worked with him, dropped him down to 45. He made it easily because he did everything he was supposed to months before. we put 4 pounds of muscle on him. So he went from like 173 up to 177. And then, leaned down, looked amazing. And then we started to bring him out about 6 weeks out or so. And, easy weight cut for him. He looked absolutely amazing. He's continued to dominate. But it's because of that. I'm almost off track here. But it's because of that 52-week-a-year dedication to the program. You do that, everything's easy. It's like saving money or any other thing in life. It's a universal principle.
Yeah, just going back to what you said with step 1, 2, and 3, get rid of the bullshit, eat on the regular, get the sleep right, eat healthy foods. With the wrestlers, I mean, essentially we tell them, look, live the lifestyle. I don't like to make it so crazy serious for them, but essentially I tell them, look, there's no off season. There's nothing hard about training 3 days a week, and you should be eating clean, at least 80-20 rule, I tell them at the younger age. How are these MMA guys able to lose 20 to 30 pounds if they're already pretty lean? Is it necessary to lose that kind of weight?
That's what most guys do, and that's what increased my own notoriety and popularity, is because the biggest guys with the biggest weight issues would hire me to get them on weight, like Rampage. You remember him? He was 261 pounds.
260?
261. Yeah. Before he fought
205.
And he fights at 205, and I got him to 205. We got him to 205, and he won that fight and beat Machida. Healthy weight cut. Johnny Hendricks is 215 pounds. He's 45 pounds over 170 when we started training camp. So he was going to fight George St. Pierre at 170 pounds. Thiago Alves had missed weight multiple times in his career, and was massive, 212-pound welterweight. He's had no problem with weight since being with me. Why do they gain so much
in the off season? Back in the day, we used to hear about it with who was the boxer with the hands of stone? He would blow up to like 260, but he was like, he gained like close to like 80 pounds. Why are fighters gaining that kind of weight and just not going down maybe like 10 to 15 pound weight class? Are they carrying excess fat? Do they perform better at that lighter weight?
It's ego and lack of discipline. There's no reason why you should blow up, 40 pounds above your weight class. So I'm not a fan of that. Hendricks, well, he doesn't do it 52 weeks out of the year. He does it more about 12 weeks. Where a guy like Nick Lentz does the 52-week, and that's why a guy like Johnny blows up bigger. And that's something that you certainly want to avoid, is stay away from that and just stick with what works the whole way through, which is just, consistency. If that's your goal, then you just follow your goal.
Yeah. What do you do? How do you work with the fighters? Do people kind of hire you to coach them for a certain amount of weeks, or they're like, Mike, dude, I need you coaching me year round? How are they working with you?
Yeah, I have two different relationships. One is career athletes that when I sign on for their career. Yep. And then other athletes, it's just, one-offs. I'm working with them for a specific fight or for an opponent or a weight cut or in a location, or they have an issue, troubleshooting more than anything else. Time-wise, it's all-consuming. To be a coach, it's all-consuming. And with my career athletes, I'm involved in everything, every aspect of their life, not just the training, family life, and everything else is intertwined. So I can only work with about 6 to 8, career athletes, at any given time. And those are guys that I won't walk away, until they do, until they resign. And then, the other athletes, I work with, all the time. Little short shots, which is nice, and I can do that in person. I do that a lot of times. I'm flown in fight week to kind of oversee the peaking process at the end, and help with the periodization of the training programs in the off season, which really helps the peaking process so much more. I like to get in early and kind of dial out their years. That's a little piece of it.
Yeah. What do you have going on now with you're with the Ultimate Fighter? How are you working with the fighters in the house and kind of helping them with their nutrition? And they're usually, it's like such a big, this is a huge part of their life now. Guys that are on the Ultimate Fighter, a couple years ago, they were still real solid, but now a lot of the guys that are on that show are climbing their way to the top real fast. What are some things you're doing with those guys, like, within the show, helping these guys dial everything in?
I was a cast member on season 7 of The Ultimate Fighter. Yeah, Rampage vs. Far. So I was a cast member of that season, 2008. And then season 10, Rampage versus Rashad, season 17, Jones versus Sonnen, and now season 19, Penn versus Edgar. I was a coach. So the coach for 3 seasons, a competitor for 1 season. I know the show extremely well. Kevin Gastelum, who won season 17, is one of my athletes that I work with on the show and continue so. Luke Barnett also just won, in the UFC for the 2nd time. He came up for season 17 also, worked with him during that show, established a relationship, and a couple of guys I just locked in with and continued on. So that's why I'm on the show right now. I go there to help the guys. It's almost like pro bono work in a way, to help mentor and share and peak these guys and keep these guys from self-imploding, which happens a lot because I'm, former cast member. I know what it's like to sleep in that madhouse. It's Lord of the Flies in there. I know because you're trying to mediate your stress levels, and you have to be peacocking all the time, and you got competition and your shoulders hurt. So I get the psychological game, and I'm able to help kind of tweak the volume and the intensity of the training sessions and peak them for these little fights because I know that they're going to fight between 3 and 5 times in a 6-week period, and I know the general rhythm of the way the show works. And when we should have the harder days and the lower days, so we can kind of wave them through. So that's really an enjoyable part of being on the show.
Right. What are some of the challenges of working with fighters, being on the show? What are some of the challenges for your own kind of your own psychological challenges, things that stress you out? What do you have to overcome? Because you have things it seems like you're organized. You're able to handle everything that's going on in your life, or if an obstacle comes up, it seems like you're able to rebound, whereas other people would break down, perhaps. So what are some of the challenges that are, tough, but you find a way to make it work?
Well, I was, at 8 years old, I saw my father collapse and have a massive stroke, and that scene is very vivid. So when you say the resiliency to challenges and such, and it's a motivating factor for me as I pursue health and fitness and spread this word, is that moment, which was very formative. So I use that concept to kind of continue and push forward with that message of being healthy and doing all the right things, but following through. And that's what most of the people don't do. They don't follow through with the lifestyle, with the program, which really turns into be the biggest issue.
Yeah. So the guys that aren't following through, sometimes I've seen that they're on the Ultimate Fighter, they have family back home, or they get there and the stress of everything just kind of they're like, man, I don't want to be here. I don't want to fight anymore. And you coaches are like, dude, I don't know if you want to walk away from all this. How do you talk to athletes, fighters, combative athletes when they're in breakdown mode? Because I've seen this also at the high school level. As you know, in New Jersey, PA, Ohio, you were just at Oklahoma, the stress levels that these wrestlers go through, or high-level athletes, what do you tell them when they're going through this stress? How do you kind of bring them to a level where it's you help them overcome the obstacle?
Try and find more about them, what makes them tick, their external factor, what's in their head, getting them into that moment, and then kind of dialing in. Each guy's different, each athlete's different, and each athlete is different from event to event, which is also something that needs to be considered as a coach. So you really try and communicate and instill confidence. If it's a performance state, if you're going to go out there and perform, you might as well go out there and win. Do your best to win 100%. If you're going to go out there and get tired, well, you might as well go out there and get fucking exhausted, because that's why we're here right now. And, you get in the athlete's head, and you reinforce those ideals, those ideas. You let them know it's okay to go out there and fight and work and try and win and scrape and, do whatever has to be done. It's okay to go out there and leave it all and let it all hang out. And then go have fun. You go out there and you do it. So trying to get that sentiment into athletes is different. Sometimes it's through joking around. Sometimes it's through very stern, talking. Sometimes it's through kind of aggression and the frat boy style. Whatever makes the athlete tick is really what I try and do.
Yeah, I always say the athletes have multiple personalities. So when I'm coaching, it's some guys respond well to that frat boy freaking out. The other one responds well to you joking, and they get the job done. So it's always that. I think that's a huge part of coaching. You have that pretty dialed in. Speaking of coaches, we have a lot of strength and conditioning coaches. that follow this. Some of them are independent business owners. Some of them are, somebody had told me that they were at a like a big, corporate type speed school, like a franchise place, and they're like, oh, who's on the next STRONGCast? So we have all kinds of coaches watching, but you are very big in the public eye. But even just the coach that's on the local level, parents might really love the coach, but then when the son or daughter loses, maybe gets hurt, then it's like, you're like, oh, well, it's because you trained with Mike. Oh, Mike told you to eat this. You never should have eaten that. You never should have trained like that. How do you handle, that kind of stress? Because fighters, it's like they've got this team and now you're in the public eye. How do you handle when people try to turn it around, or they're saying like, man, if you shouldn't have cut weight the way Mike told you to? How do you handle the stressors of being kind of a high level coach? There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
Fortunately, that's never happened. It's never happened, and that is where the stress lies. The stress lies in perfection. Sure. The stress lies in every time there's an event. One of the storylines become, will the athlete make weight? Will Dolce, never had an athlete miss before? Will this be the time?
Right.
So it's like the media's waiting, the public's waiting to, I told you suck.
They love that,
You don't know what the fuck you're doing. That's what's going on. And it's not, I keep the athletes happy, or I keep them healthy. That's my role, and that's my job. And that's why they love what I do. You hear why I work with Vitor Belfort and continue to do so through his career evolution. And Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah, Vitor's been fighting. I remember watching him fight at age 19. Like, I remember when he knocked Tank Abbott out. He was just fearless. Him too. He's had a lot of staying power. And how do you get into? That must be a lot of pressure, not just on him, but also on you. Here's a guy who's supposed to be done fighting, but he actually had a downtime. He makes this comeback, and he's rising. He's rising. He's changed physically. He's also changed, mentally. How do you work with somebody like that who's kind of like coming back?
It's beautiful. I started with Vitor at the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, and it's been a great ride because I started with him right at the bottom, the bottom, at the end, and that's why he brought me in, because they needed a change. Needed to change his life, and that's something that they wanted to do. And he had followed the bodybuilding style.
He was
supplements.
A big guy.
He spared no expense to live the scientific lifestyle. And I looked at it, and I opened up his cabinets and his pantry, and put everything on the table, and I grabbed little bottles, and I said, all right, this and the ingredients. So now we can replace this with this piece of broccoli right here. What do you want to do? And kind of coached him through that. Well, let's try the broccoli. If it doesn't work, well, we'll go back to the pills. And we kind of pushed all that stuff to the side and built up a lifestyle for him of earth-grown nutrients, of real food, but not the bodybuilding style. Because before that, he was eating, half a sweet potato and 6 ounces of grilled chicken and steamed broccoli. Because the programs he followed were always the bodybuilding, fucking boredom programs, and crush your adrenal fucking programs, and just ruin your desire for the sport. Those programs. So I taught him how to have fun with food. I don't want to make this all about Vitor, but this was part of the change and part of the transition to kind of teach him this area. And he said that I'm, in this world, he's like, I'm the black belt, because he's tried many of the other coaches out there. Vitor, his career, long-standing career. And so I'm proud to still be with him, during all this time. We're still evolving. And I think the work that he's doing, he gets full credit for it, is amazing. That's what's causing this rebirth. He's 52 weeks a year, everything. Everything he does perfectly. He sleeps perfectly. He does everything perfectly. Massages constantly. He spares no expense to be healthy and do everything perfectly. That's why he's doing as well as he is. That's why he looks the way he does. Just doing it more often than everybody else out there.
Yeah. And do you do the strength and conditioning for any of the fighters, or you do the nutrition mostly?
I do about half and half. Strength and conditioning I do for Thiago Alves. I did it for Mike Pyle. I oversee the strength and conditioning for Nick Lentz, and many of the other guys. I oversee the periodization. If I'm not there on the ground with the athlete, then it's for another coach to do.
Yeah.
But I certainly help with the programming and making sure that everything fits. So oftentimes, as you know, the coaches don't have the ability to speak with each other. The Muay Thai coach in one gym doesn't speak with a wrestling coach in another, and the strength coach in another. And I become a filter for the athlete, that I can coordinate that and then make sure that they have all the food, the rest, the recuperation that they need to continue clipping forward.
Right. So I don't want to take up much of your time. We're at the 1 hour mark. A lot of people sent in some real unique Twitter questions. We're gonna do two of them. The first one was about cutting weight. Somebody was talking about should fighters carb deplete like that last week, those last 10 days, because carbs are holding water. What do you have to say about that stuff?
Yeah, and that's the way most people do it. If you want to compete in the UFC, well, that's the way most people do it, not the way my athletes do it. That's the wrong way to do it. As we know, the body needs carbohydrates to function. Why would you be at your least healthy the day before your most important physical competition of your life? That's the goal when we go into these weight cuts. So, of course, you need carbohydrate intake. You need it in very specific increments at very specific times based upon what you just did, what you're about to do. Earth Grow Nutrients, number one. So it's a real carbohydrate source. Maybe it's a handful of blueberries. Maybe it's a bowl of quinoa. Maybe it's the breakfast bowl. I mean, my athletes eat the breakfast bowl every morning, even during fight week, even while they're peaking, while they're dehydrating, while they're cutting weight. So we eat carbs the entire time, to answer the question.
Good one. What's so funny is like we just trained a Muay Thai fighter, and he just had a big fight, and he didn't know like what to do nutrition wise. And I'm not the kind of guy that says this is what you do. So we sent him to a nutritionist, and it was so close to the fight, but we're next to a bodybuilding gym, and he was getting nutrition advice from the bodybuilder, and he had him carb depleting. And I saw him like when he was rolling out after work. I was like, dude, you look like your eyes were rolling back your head. He's like, I'm carb depleting for 3 days. I'm like, that doesn't sound right, bro. You're training Muay Thai, then you're coming here, then you're going back, and you're working the pads. You're training 4 hours a day. And then he started dialing in that nutrition. He got with the nutritionist. For the people that are unable to work with you from a career, career fight or a one-on fight, you got a couple of books out. What is the book for like the guys that are out there that are fighting in MMA? There may be college, post-college guys. They're fighting. They need to find a nutrition program. Which is the book out of yours that you would want them to best invest in and follow?
3 Weeks to Shredded is the weight cutting manual. It's how I lost 27.8 pounds in 3 weeks to fight Antonio McKee in the IFL at welterweight. So that's 3 Weeks to Shredded. That's the first book we put out, and that continues to sell off the charts. It's absolutely insane, and it's very humble. It's a 50-page manual. I tell you exactly what I did and break it down, and you'd be surprised at the guys in the UFC that come up and thank me for it. So you don't need to hire me. Just get 3 Weeks to Shredded. I mean, that's what you need. Now, from that, if you want to live the lifestyle, the 52-week lifestyle, then you get Living Lean. That book we wrote 2011 or so, I think. Living Lean has a little bit of the philosophy behind why I think and do what I do. And then it has the meal plans. It has a complete grocery list. It has recipes. And it has different workout programs for the beginner to intermediate trainee. And then we have the Living Lean cookbook, which is 130 additional extra recipes. And now we just came out with the College Diet Guide, which is...
Everybody's loving it.
And yeah, people are loving it, and we're seeing great effects from it because as much as I travel the world, and I don't check luggage because it gets lost too often. So I have a backpack and I have a carry-on roller, and that's how I travel the world. And I live, very simply, and I live for, weeks at a time. And often I'm responsible for feeding not just myself, Earth Grow Nutrients, real foods, because I'm not making excuses no matter where I am, but also for my multi-million-dollar professional athlete. So I have to source the ingredients and the food preparation methods and things like that. And very similar to living in a college dorm where you can't have a hot plate, you can't have a flame, you can't, maybe you can't even have a coffee maker in some of these places. So we came out with the diet guide, how to do it, using some examples of kids, that have done it, successfully in college. One of which was a Division I wrestler, Rich Kiley, who wrestled for Nebraska. He was a teammate of Jordan Barroza, our most recent U.S. gold medalist. Rich tells his story, and he actually followed 3 Weeks to Shredded while competing in college wrestling, and then how that turned into Living Lean, and then kind of we use his story in the College Diet Guide. And, so it's good information. I'm excited about it because I see how these college kids are getting screwed. My cousin goes to Lehigh, and he had to pay, it's like, what's that?
Who's your cousin?
Sean Kochel.
I was at Lehigh. but
Okay.
I can't remember. I don't know all the kids' names.
Okay. So yeah, and actually his sister, Emma Coach, I'm sending to you. We'll talk offline about that. She's a champion gymnast and she's training now at Pellegrino's MMA. She's
Nice.
got skills grappling, and I want to make sure she's working with the right coach. She's still a young girl. So you're the guy for that. But we'll talk about that
Yeah.
offline.
What we have a ton of high school coaches, wrestling coaches following me, a lot of wrestlers themselves. What would be the book for them that you would recommend them to read that starts getting their head into the right place?
3 weeks to Shredded would be the one most wrestlers in season find the greatest benefit, because you can adopt the week one meal plan
Yep.
and get fucking lean and dry and still have the energy, and it tastes good. Coleman Scott, who won the bronze medal, I think, at 132 pounds in this last Olympics. He trains. He's from Oklahoma State, national champion Oklahoma State. Trains with Coach Smith and Zach Esposito. I didn't even know. Well, he used 3 weeks to Shredded to get ready for the fucking Olympic Games, and told me, and he said, this was my secret. He said, this was my, I didn't tell anybody, because people were like, how the fuck are you in such good shape? And he's like, just, extra runs. He made it up because he didn't want to give an advantage to the international competition. Kind of a cool backstory. So if it has his seal of approval, which I didn't even know about, it's good for any wrestler. And parents, I think, will enjoy reading it because they'll see that their kids can eat more than the apple and the whole milk. That's what they eat.
It's horrible. They're still eating the way I feel like we ate back in the early 90s. They're just not like progressing with that. I'm going to pick up a bunch of copies for our kids. We've got some kids that do cut a good amount of weight, but they do it the wrong way, and I know they could be better with it. So I'm definitely going to pick that up. Let's close out. Let's tell people best place to connect with you. Where would you want them to follow you?
Check out thedolcediet.com. That is the website. That gets you everywhere else. You can always hit me on Twitter at the Dolce Diet. That's pretty much everything. Instagram is at the Dolce Diet, and YouTube channel. I do have some strength videos, some cooking videos, some health, fitness, exercise related videos, and then some behind the scenes stuff on our YouTube channel. Facebook, we interact quite a bit. And then, hopefully we'll get you on my podcast, the Mike Dolce Show, here soon, which will be awesome. That's a good way for if your audience wants to pay attention to whatever I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think they should definitely pay attention. Just a lot, you're so disciplined. It's really cool to see somebody that's your evolution of everything. You're doing so much work. Do you ever do like any appearances where people could kind of come and meet up with you if you're doing like small, shorter seminars where they could really listen to you in person? Do you have any of that stuff coming up?
A few different events. I'm planning. I'm going to be in Australia beginning of first 10 days in December.
Nice.
I'm going to be in the UK, Ireland, Scotland, Wales.
UK has tough guys. I always like the people from UK. Tough dudes.
Tough sons of bitches, right? Yeah.
They don't care that. Yeah, they're just not into. They don't sweat that nothing's pretty. I guess because like they come from hard times.
That's it. Yes. I spent a year, 13 months actually, living in England doing training camps, mostly with Rampage and Michael Bisping back in those days. And I know why they're so tough, because it's fucking cold and it's damp and the food sucks and everyone's smoking cigarettes and they're all miserable. So these guys, as they want to get into a fist fight, it makes them feel better, and then they've already seen the shit, so it doesn't bother them.
Awesome. Cool, man. I'll definitely would love to be a guest on your show. That would be an honor. And awesome. Everybody watching, thanks for watching STRONGCast Podcast. Get more at undergroundstrength.tv. Make sure you're checking out Mike, the Dolce Diet, Twitter, YouTube. But on Twitter, you can interact with him. And on the bottom of this at undergroundstrength.tv, I will link up all the links to your books, Twitter, and all that stuff, so you guys can connect and check out those resources from there. Thanks, everybody, and peace out.